What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today this is going to be the post-Senior Bowl 2-round mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You know how to do YouTube. Look at it below my face. That is going to be my board. Yes, it is still being updated, as it will throughout the entire draft process. So, if you have an issue with it, feel free to voice it down in the comment section below. But also remember, everything's TBD. We're continuing to watch tape as we have all year long, and it's going to continue to develop all year long. So super excited for that. Y'all know how much I love falling in love with players. So that's going to happen a lot. So stay tuned for that. It might irritate you. You might love it. Who cares? Below that is going to be all the great ways to get involved with the community, as well as take advantage of our two sponsors, Olipop as well as UnderDog Fantasy. Use those codes, help your boy out, and get some goodies from me. But let's get into this video. I did just come back from the Senior Bowl. Was trying to post some videos, but beloved AT&T did not install my Wi-Fi properly. So we just got it. We're good. Hallelujah. This is no trades with one exception, because I think that in a 2-round mock draft where I think a quarterback named Justin Fields will garner a 2nd-round pick, it makes sense to trade Justin Fields. So that's the only modification that we're going to be dealing with at the moment. So bear in mind that is going to be the sitch. So very excited. I will be talking, actually, like we'll do the trade first, then we'll talk about like my big announcement. It isn't something that's going to blow your socks off, but I'll explain why it's actually so momentous. It's the biggest, honestly, the biggest life event that's ever happened in the show. So it's kind of cool. And we just came back from Mobile, so I'll have plenty of stories as we go along. But let's just trade Justin Fields right now. Let's discuss it. By the way, the first pick's going to be Caleb Williams. I think Justin Fields, yes, he has technically a year left plus a 5th-year contract. We all know no quarterbacks will really last through that 5th-year contract before an extension, but, it is possible. I love Justin Fields. I think he's a great player, but I just don't know if he's put it all together yet, and how many more years do we have to wait before he's a Super Bowl level quarterback? The real question is, what's the goal in the NFL? There's a lot of teams that take some pretty mediocre quarterbacks that could get them somewhere in the playoffs, but just probably can't win a Super Bowl. Is the organization's goal job security and just consistent wins? Then maybe you can, try to continue wait and develop, because Justin will get you probably to the playoffs and, maybe not very deep into it. And that's me being a very big optimist. I love Justin Fields. But Caleb Williams is that type of guy who I genuinely believe can win a Super Bowl. And it's so much of a difference, in my opinion, that I'd be willing to take him and trade Justin. And you could still get some good value out of Justin, right? So that's why we're trading him. He is going to potentially, I love the idea of New England. That is actually an idea I do love. But, the weapons there aren't good. The offensive line, not great at the moment. So you're kind of just giving Justin a worse situation. I don't like that. There are a couple teams that are trying to trade into the top 3. And that's going to be Minnesota, Vegas. I could see Atlanta being a big part of that equation, but I'm actually going to send Justin to Vegas. And here's why. I don't think I'm going to be trading out with Washington or with New England at the moment. So feel free to get angry about that. But if they were willing to, maybe the Raiders can move up to maybe Washington spots like Jaden Daniels and pair him back up with Antonio Pierce. That's not going to happen in this. So if you want to be able to get a quarterback very similar to Jaden Daniels in the fact he has great mobility, he actually can hit those big plays, and maybe needs a little bit more development in terms of the processor. Like, they're pretty similar in those aspects. It makes sense for Antonio Pierce to go with what he's very comfortable with, and that's someone with a very explosive arm. Honestly, the offensive line is not that bad. We could actually use maybe one tackle in there, and then that offensive line solidified. But this team certainly could use this pick. Maybe you can toss in a future 4, maybe it's a future 3rd. That's not going to affect the mock draft. This is the one trade that is going to happen. So there you go. We are going to force that on through. Vegas takes on Justin Fields. It just makes sense, and they're in the rumors trying to move up for a QB. So if they can't do that, this is a much cheaper way to be able to handle that situation. But yes, the Bears go after Caleb Williams. I guess now is a good time, because the Bears fans have heard enough and they can skip forward in the video, for me to talk about the big announcement. I just got my first full-time offer. I did just graduate SMU, like, as y'all who have been loyal fans know. I just got my first full-time offer, and, looking for a full-time job, that is very concerning in terms of being able to balance it with a business like this. This is my life. This is my passion. And, it just doesn't pay the bills. Simply put. And I went to college not to be a server and, a YouTuber. Like, YouTuber is going to be my dream, but I don't want to be a server, right? So I had to get a full-time job. and I just got my first offer. So thank y'all for saying stuff down in the comment section below. I love y'all. And I was really worried because the job's out in California. But as of right now, it's not actually accepted yet, but it's on the table. It's fully remote. And that allows me to pay the bills, but also actually be able to continue the show. I was genuinely concerned that, driving an hour or two a day plus, an 8 to 9 hour work day plus, having to be able to sleep was going to make it very difficult to continue the show. That's no longer an issue. So we can rejoice. It is awesome. The show will continue. It's not a big breaking news like, like Mike Renner is going to be, my new boss. No, he might be able to come on the show, by the way. Love Mike. Got to hang out with him one-on-one. That's wild. It was actually wild. It was technically 2-on-1 with that franchise guy, but we'll throw that aside. Got to hang out with Mike we had a quick little one-on-one sesh for like 10-15 minutes, which was incredible. Again, we'll talk about it as time goes on. Commanders, though, we're going to be going Jaden Daniels here over Drake May. Technically, could go Drake May. Does feel a little bit closer to the Dak Prescott build in terms of, big playmaking upside. Not as run dependent as Dak. Obviously, I'm just primarily highlighting what the new head coach has been with, there in Dallas for so long, Dan Quinn. So, could actually be more of a guy for Drake May. But Jaden Daniels feels like such a better fit for Cliff Kingsbury. That's what really came into the fold for me. And that is why I'm going to be going after Jaden here. Just to cut things, just to get to the chase, I think New England should actually be really debating between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake May. Looking at how the quarterbacks performed in the Senior Bowl, there's some issues. There's some issues for sure. I saw quite a few inconsistencies here and there. So this quarterback class doesn't provide the absolute depth that I think that it could have. Even with Joe Milton having an awful Senior Bowl game, he had some solid Senior Bowl practices, but he's just not going to be the guy for a team that wants to have their signal caller be able to play this year, right? And he's already too old for that type of development. This is not a move the New England Patriots would probably go after. And love Michael Pratt, but sniping a quarterback down the board in this class looks a little bit more difficult than wide receiver. I do think it is a 30% chance it is Marvin Harrison Jr., but we are going to go Drake May. Get the quarterback right. Just do it. He has a ton of potential. If you guys end up sucking and having to get another quarterback, Drake will still garner potentially a first next year. So at least you get to have that there as well. At pick number 4 for the Arizona Cardinals, I have heard that quite a few teams actually have Malik Neighbors above Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what happens when you're in Mobile and you end up, sitting down and overhearing quite a few conversations from very important people. So yeah, a minimum of 3 to 4 teams have Malik Neighbors as a solidified wide receiver 1. Other ones are debating it. That being said, I'm still going to go Marvin because I think Marvin is a true all-around wide receiver, and I don't think specialization is as needed for the Cardinals as maybe some other teams that are just saying we want someone who could be truly explosive. I think the Cardinals should be looking for someone who's just really damn solid all around, essentially being what D-Hop was supposed to be there. And D-Hop had his own really good runs there in Arizona. At pick number 5 for the Los Angeles Chargers, for me, for the Chargers, I look back at Jim Harbaugh's career, and he's always relied on a tight end like Vernon Davis. He's always had Luke Schoonmaker, and even this year, Loveland. Everywhere he's gone, every team he's been on, there have been elite tight ends, there have been elite linebackers, and technically you could wait till round 2, get Jatavian Sanders there, and that'd be pretty insane. The one thing I don't think Harbaugh is putting a ton of value on is that receiver position. Cornelius Johnson as well as Roman Wilson are excellent players, but those guys are essentially the same thing as a 3rd round pick who will play like a first. I think he's really good at getting the value at the wide receiver position. He seems to put a lot of emphasis on those tight ends. He seems to get value at wide receiver. And honestly, he gets value at tackle as well. This year, Ladarius Henderson, that's a guy who is an ASU tackle. It's not like you're taking somebody who is going to be a bona fide superstar tackle like Kingsley Suamataia going to BYU. So I think that if we're going to go through the value system of Jim Harbaugh, he's going to appreciate Brock Bowers the most. And I want Brock to go to a place where he's really appreciated. Now, tight end value, not necessarily the same as other positions, but I think this makes sense. They're looking to add some extra blocking help as well, and Brock Bowers is really underrated as a blocker. Big fan of what he can do. just overall one of the best tight ends that we've ever seen. At pick 6 for the New York Giants, I'm going to go Malik Neighbors here. Discuss the fact that he might go above Marvin Harrison Jr., so it kind of makes sense why he should go in pretty close proximity to Marvin Harrison Jr. The Giants have been looking for that true superstar for a long time. Pick number 7, the Tennessee Titans. This is a team I actually could see doing a trade back if one of the quarterbacks slips a little bit. Like if Jaden Daniels isn't looked at very favorably, or, if the Patriots go Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe the Giants are just not in the mood for a QB. This is a spot where I could totally see a trade out. I actually got to talk to Ramon Foster, who is their O-line scout. Cool dude, by the way. But he was really excited about, where's he at? Tyler Guyton. Really excited about Guyton. So maybe that's an insider info. I don't know. Of course, one scout is not going to determine what an organization does, but I'm going to do what's best for the organization. That's to go Joe Alt here out of Notre Dame. He is literally the perfect, of all the players here, the best fit out of everything, including my just long-ass spiel about Brock Bowers, is Joe Alt. He is just the ideal complement to Peter Skoronski, and there's not much more I could say about it. It just really is that perfect of a pairing. At pick number 8 for the Atlanta Falcons, they need quarterback, they need wide receiver, they need edge rusher as well. So these top 3 needs are exactly correct per PFF. Now, for me, I love the idea of potentially putting Rome Odunze and pairing him up with Drake London. I think that's a smart move for the team, but we do have a second round pick. This class does have some pretty good round 2 talents. So I'm going to cheap out on this one. Everybody, including their grandma, is putting Dallas Turner to the Falcons. I don't know why it is literally set in stone. I don't think it should be that set in stone, but this edge class did get a little bit thinner, especially after round 1. So I can understand for a team that didn't have a pass rusher over 6.5 sacks, that they would be in the mood to go after a player like Dallas Turner, who has the versatility. He's a little bit on the lighter side, but he plays much heavier. He is an unbelievable athlete. He complements so well what they already have. Arnold Ebiketie, a nice middleweight there. And then you have Zach Harrison, who's developing, and he's the bigger guy at 270. You have now a really good rotation of young guys in there, and Dallas Turner could be really someone special. At pick number 9 for the Chicago Bears, it's going to be Rome Odunze or an edge rusher. We do have that pick 44, so I don't know if we want to go Rome Odunze here because it looks great in the thumbnail. Just got to call it out as it is. Getting that one extra weapon, Darnell Mooney up for a contract this year, so essentially you're down to DJ Moore and DJ Moore alone. If we are to project what's going to be there in round 2 at pick 44, maybe Xavier Legette will be there. Maybe Jalen Polk. And if we're going to look at those edge rushers, who's going to be there? Maybe Chris Braswell. Maybe Jonah Ellis. Maybe Darius. But I really like taking edge rushers. I really do. And I think they deserve a lot more credit than they're getting in some of these mock drafts. So, it's great that we see Darius Robinson rising up so much. I might have adjusted my board for him, but we do have some guys who are good value for the Bears, but I don't think the Bears are looking for good value. Their defense was their strength last year, and you don't want to lose that type of strength. You want to continue having high levels of sacks, and you just want to be able to kick some butt. And for me, Jared Verse, who is about 255, 260, has a great compliment base for Montez Sweat. And so I'm going to go actually after Jared Verse out of Florida State. Again, wide receiver, edge rusher, those are the 2 positions I'd be looking at. I think Rome Odunze is a great choice. That's why I debated it. But Jared Verse feels like a great option as well. Pick number 10 for the Jets is down to Rome Odunze and Olu Fashanu as well as Tali Fuaga. The question is, do you want to get your right tackle of the future or the left tackle of the future? I think Olu brings a little bit more in terms of pass protection day 1. I think Tali brings a lot more in terms of the run game on day 1. Tali has been phenomenal. I think he gets in his head a little bit too much at points. Obviously, he's been a guy who I had as my tackle number 2 coming into the year. Yes, during the summer, I had him as my tackle 2 above Olu Fashanu, by the way. So y'all know how much I love Tali. So I'm just giving a little bit of tough love here. After losing reps, I think he gets a little bit in his head and he sometimes overcompensates. So do we all. And I think that's a very easy workable trait. The question is, can you handle that with Aaron Rodgers? Can you handle having that being a potential issue for maybe a couple games into the year before he gets a little more comfortable being at that spot at this level. I think with the sheer amount of practice that he will get versus elite level pass rushers, because you got Will McDonald there, you got Jermaine Johnson, both those guys are first round picks. Both of them are excellent. I'm gonna throw a little bit of curveball here. We're gonna go with Tolly. I'm a big fan, obviously, of Fuaga. We got his number, by the way. We might be able to bring him on the show. It's gonna be sick. My buddy from high school plays for Oregon State, so got to meet Tolly there in Mobile. Honestly, one of the most stand-up dudes. Talked to him right after his NFL Network show. So he was on NFL Network. It got offset, and that's when I got to be able to talk to him, which was sick. Got to talk to him a couple times. Dude's just a chill dude. Big fan of him. Pick number 11, though, for the Minnesota Vikings. I think that this might be another location for one of those edge rushers. Quarterback absolutely should be on the market, but I don't think Bo Nix separated himself enough. I don't think Michael Penix separated himself enough to be able to push his stock that high. I just didn't get wowed by them in person. I thought they did very solid jobs, but not for pick number 11. And y'all know how I feel about the quarterbacks as it is. And Bo Nix slipped out of my number 3 QB spot. So there you go. I'm going to be going after an edge rusher or a defensive interior here. The question is, who do you go after? I think the defensive interior spot is a little bit better in round number 2 than I think the quarterback slot or the defensive interior slot is. Or how do I say this? The defensive interior will be better in round 2 than the edge rusher is here because I'm going to put an emphasis on edge. Losing Danielle Hunter, DJ Wonham, as well as Marcus Davenport, that's a big oof. Now, I do think defensive interior should at least be considered here. But when looking at the targets available, there is a noticeable drop-off. There is. And Leatu Latu had a great week. Now, he does have some physical limitations. He has some shorter arms, but the mobility is just freaky. And I think if he gains a little bit more power with his lower body, this guy could be absolutely unstoppable. The only big question with him is, are the medicals going to check out? So far, feels like that's a good possibility. So let's go Leatu Latu here out of UCLA. Maybe you can bring back Kirk. That would be, in my opinion, a dream scenario. Maybe you can bring back Danielle Hunter. I don't know how that cap situation would work. That'd be awful, but one can dream. But Leatu Latu is going to be a Minnesota Viking. So 3 edge rushers go in the top 11. At pick 12 for the Denver Broncos, we're seeing Rome slip a little bit here, and that's okay. It happens to the best of them. Good players fall in the draft. It looks like corner is a very large primary position for the Broncos to target. Without a second round pick, I think it's key to look at who they might try to target position-wise in round 2 if they were to have a pick. And I'm looking at wide receiver because I do think that should still be on the forefront of their mind. I think quarterback also in that mix. This is a good landing spot potentially for Spencer Rattler, who had a very, very solid week, even though he had his stumbles, his interceptions here and there. Still had a pretty damn solid week. Looking at other options, I think Olu Fashanu, Garrett Bowles, he already brought up the fact he doesn't want to be on a losing team. He wants to win. This is not the organization for that to happen. Could be a spot for Olu Fashanu. And offensive line kind of does feel like a Sean Payton thing to do. So also got to bring up the edge rushers in here. I just don't think that any of these edge rushers will garner the value of this pick. I have seen a ton of love for Terrion Arnold, though. And I think that might be a little bit of the focus. Now, the DB's coach, if I'm not mistaken, is now on the Eagles. So maybe there's a little bit less of a focus. But for today, we're going to go with Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama, to be that corner 2 to Pat Surtain. If he ends up being traded one day, you still need a corner 1. And best case scenario is you don't trade Surtain and you have 2 elite corners. Terrion Arnold is my corner number 1. I think his field awareness is unteachable, and the rest is. And I think the rest is where he needs a little bit more of the refinement. And I don't know if there's a better person to teach him than Patrick Surtain. At pick 13, we're with the Vegas Raiders, who did trade for Justin Fields. I'm looking at Olu Fashanu here, and I think the value is too good. Now, I do think the defense needs some help, but Antonio Pierce, he does a very good job at maximizing that defense. And I think this team could use just one more offensive line piece. I'm not going to send a Bama tackle again to y'all. I love y'all, and I'm not going to do that. We're going to go Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, stealing him right here from the New Orleans Saints. But yes, this team does need just a little bit more. And if you're going to invest in Justin, you stick to your strengths, right? And then you build you're able to patch your weaknesses with good value. The weaknesses right now are, you need an elite right tackle one day. Olafashanu could be that, and he has great mobility, and you need a quarterback. You did that. You patched that with your picks, and now you have a really good defensive mind in AP who could end up sitting there and being, well, I see great potential in this guy. And when you have a head coach that can really understand the fundamentals of defense, I trust them to get the good value down the line a lot better than getting the value offense down the line. So pick number 14 for the New Orleans Saints. Quarterback, tackle, those are the positions I want to go after. But Rome Odunze being here is very hard to pass on. A lot of people love Rome. I think I would have had a team maybe trade up right here with the Broncos to get Rome. I think that's a very smart move. Or with the Vikings that love to trade back to get Rome or an offensive tackle, right? I think this is a great location for multiple teams, including the Saints, to try to make a small jump to get that left tackle of the future. Doesn't happen in a no trades mock draft, right? We're going to be doing a trades mock draft very, very soon. Again, quarterbacks not valuable enough at the moment. Defensive interior with Byron Murphy could certainly be on the table here. I do think Rome is a dark horse candidate for this pick. However, I mean, it's hard to say no to Amarius Mims, 6'7", 340. He had some injuries this year, but I don't think he would have come out if he realized that he was not going to be a top 15 to 20 pick. Like, he has another year of eligibility with a team in Georgia that could win a championship. Or he could have transferred and got more NIL money. There's no reason for someone who played half a year to come out if the NFL didn't believe in him. So I'm going to be taking Amarius Mims. That's the logic, but also Trevor Penning is absolute butt cheeks. You're not going to get a downgrade right away, and you're getting someone who could be truly the face of your franchise. The Colts are blessed. At pick 15, the Colts are going to go Rome Odunze. I just got to put that out there. I did not expect Rome to be here. Good players fall in the draft. This is a very solid receiver draft for sure. You got guys like Ladd McConkey who are performing very well, Ricky Pearsall, and it just adds to the depth and it takes away from the necessity to go after some wide receivers earlier on. Now, I don't know if Rome actually gets here during the draft because I think at that 6'3", 215 frame, being a very fluid mover, teams are going to love that. That's a true wide receiver one build. But in this situation, I mean, good players fall, and sometimes it's just because teams are scared of losing another guy that they really need versus getting the guy that they really want. It happens. Pick 16, though, for Seattle. Y'all are doing a great job right now organizationally. I feel very confident in the direction that y'all are going. Looking at the options available, I certainly could see Troy Fautanu being one of those guys that you do bring in to be that guard who ends up playing tackle in case of injury. Like, it does feel like a Seattle Seahawks move. It's a little bit early, but I mean, this team values offensive line very highly. You drafted Charles Cross and I think Abe Lucas in the same draft. And so y'all do put a heavy emphasis on offensive line, are willing to take them early and often. And you are based through the run game. Like, you have Zach Charbonnet there. Go Oaks. Love him. Love my boy Zach. And then you also have Kenny Walker there. Like, I think DJ Dallas might be up for a contract. Regardless, it's not going to make a difference. You guys have a central identity through the run game, and Troy Fautanu is exactly that. And when injuries occur, or even inefficiencies, you have someone who can play tackle. And I just started falling in love with the pick. I think it's a little bit early, even though I'm very high on Troy Fautanu. I just feel like it's that move where the Seahawks just don't want to take a chance of a team like the Jaguars getting excited and taking a player like Troy. At pick 17 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think that you got a guy like Quinion Mitchell here who is very, very similar in terms of the stickiness and the aggressiveness of Tyson Campbell that they took back in the day. Now, I know different regime took him than the one now, but he is somebody that has some very recent tape. I don't think he's as good as people said he was during that bowl, though. I mean, I had my own issues with Quinion. He had some very good reps, and that's a big plus. I mean, it shows that he belongs in the first round, and, that's a great sign. But for me, when I watched Quinion, his losses matter more to me than his wins, of course, because losses happen, and they're going to happen. So whether they like it or not, it's going to happen. So how do they handle it? Quinion on that Roman Wilson rep, I was standing there right in the group of people, and I just saw him sulk. His head went down. His body language just sulked. That's contagious in the wrong way. Now, that's something that could potentially be an overanalyzation. But when I'm looking at my type of guy, that's something I certainly look into. I'm like, hey, how are you going to affect your other teammates? I don't think like he's going to be losing stock because of that, but that's just my only potential issue. I love Ennis Rakestraw. Ennis didn't play in the Senior Bowl, so I don't think he's going above him. I still think Kool-Aid should be getting some more respect, but, it is what it is. But I'm looking at it, it's Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins, or Quinion Mitchell. And I do think Quinion is the more logical pick. I just have to bring up the negative side. He proved that he can play press man corner. He's always playing off coverage. So he proved that he can play a whole entire new style of game. And he has great physicality. He has the athleticism to keep up, and he has a great frame. That's a position and a player that the Jaguars are certainly going to be looking for. Pick 18 for the Cincinnati Bengals. Going to be going offensive tackle here. And Tyler Guyton might be challenging J.C. Latham here, but we're going to go after our boy J.C. Bama tackle to replace Bama tackle in Jonah Williams. Pick number 19 for the Los Angeles Rams. Cooper DeJean's here. Hard to say no. It's nice to see all these fresh faces on here, by the way. Jackson Powers Johnson, hell, in that edge core, we got Darius Robinson. Like the Rams, I think, are going to value Cooper DeJean so much because of that versatility, and he's a hard worker. He's coming off a leg break, so that's why he's kind of slipping. I do think that you got guys like Johnny Newton here, but if we're at this point, the Rams' defensive identity has come through Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald's time is coming to a close. I think Byron Murphy might actually get picked a lot higher than people think. He ended up opting out of the Senior Bowl, which means he's pretty damn happy with his stock. And I think he'll be the first defensive interior taken. So this is going to be a curveball, but we're going to be taking Byron Murphy, the second out of Texas there for the Rams. It is somebody at 20 years old. If Aaron Donald ends up sticking around, it's a player who really could use that extra development to get to that Jalen Carter level. If not, he still has so much potential and so much talent that he will be an instant impact next to Kobe Turner. Like Kobe Turner was such a hit that you get Byron Murphy and Kobe Turner for the future. You have two young, extremely talented defensive interiors. And again, the Rams' identity has been defensive interior dominance. That's how you won the Super Bowl. Aaron Donald closed the Super Bowl out. So I do think that it is a move that this team will be very, very excited to make. Pittsburgh Steelers. We're looking at a corner. We're looking at a center. We're looking at a right tackle because I think Broderick Jones should move to the left tackle. Now, when analyzing Tyler Guyton, he needs some development, but the dude has so much tenacity, and I love his fight. A great player. I think that he boosted his stock enough to where a lot of teams might take him a little earlier than expected. This tackle class might go off the board really quickly. And corner-wise, you still get some great corners here, but there is some good ones down the line. So I'm going to go Tyler Guyton here for the Steelers. Mike Tomlin was looking at quarterbacks, by the way. Shook Mike Tomlin's hand. That's sick. Feel free to follow me on Twitter where I went off like 24/7 about everything that was going on there. Feel free to follow the Instagram as well because I'm using that a lot more. Doesn't get enough publicity, but, for those of y'all who want to keep up on my regular life, you can go there. But got to watch a lot of Tyler Guyton. Omar Khan was actually standing next to me and Connor Rogers while we were watching Tyler Guyton. So Khan's gonna Khan. And very well might be going after Tyler Guyton in round number 1. Kick Broderick Jones back to left and prosper. Pick 21 for the Miami Dolphins. Looking at Jackson Powers Johnson here primarily. Jordan Morgan, I think, will end up being interior offensive line. So I think it was Sarah who's been telling me this the whole time, that Jordan will be a guard. So I will let you win this one. I think he will. He came in with sub 33-inch arms, didn't have a very good week, so I just don't think he's going to be a first-round player. Jackson Powers Johnson proved to be an elite force at both center and guard. That carries a lot of weight. And on a team that is looking to replace 2 or 3 of their guys who are going into free agency, that's kind of key. So we're going to go Jackson Powers Johnson to be the first interior offensive lineman taken that is not Troy Fautanu, because technically Troy's a tackle, but he's going bed to guard. Pick number 22 for the Philadelphia Eagles. So was really hoping Tyler Guyton would be here, and then I ended up screwing myself over. Ayo. But with Vic Fangio being there, and you look at, again, pretty sure about this because my buddy, he texted me a billion things. So shout out to Keon. Love you, buddy. But he ended up talking about that Broncos DB coach. He potentially can come in, or he's already there. Either way, it shows that there's a value system that is being set. in that Vic Fangio system. And that Vic Fangio system leans primarily towards the values of Kool-Aid McKinstry and Ennis Rakestraw, guys who are willing to get their hands dirty and have physical dominance. I think Kool-Aid's a little bit more up to speed. Also, it kind of helps that the DB coach of the Broncos has been having a Bama corner #1 on his team when he's been successful. So I actually think Kool-Aid McKinstry might be the option here. You need to get rid of the old heads. James Bradbury's going to be gone. Darius Slay honestly might be relegated as a backup. And then you have Eli Ricks, who is not as good as Kool-Aid, was not as good as Kool-Aid last year. And then you have a developing Keely Ringo. Kool-Aid also has the physical size to play in the slot, and he can handle a CD Lamb. The question is, do you have a player that can handle CD Lamb? I think Kool-Aid can. So I've seen Kool-Aid take reps off. That's my big no-no. But I've seen him after getting beat on one of those poor reps, he comes back and plays better than any other corner in the class. I think if you can get that motivation in there, maybe Big Play Slay can finally light a fire under his ass and not just say, oh, we'll be better. Like maybe he could be a little Chauncey in there, get a little energy. You'll get someone like Kool-Aid to play 10,000 times more. Who knows? Maybe you get Mike Sanders still in like the 4th round. That'd be pretty cool. Pair him up and get that energy in there. But if you get Kool-Aid to be the good Kool-Aid, he's better than every corner in this class. There's no doubt about it. The question is, what Kool-Aid are you going to get each play? That's a question I don't really like the answer to, but it is what it is. At pick 23 for the Houston Texans, I'm looking primarily at defensive interior for this team. And, looking at all the coaches coming back, it looks like they have a designated view for progression in the future. Already did a great job in the playoffs. I think the one area where they're going to look at is that defensive interior. And you got Jerzon Newton, who is phenomenal. But I think Tavondre Sweat is exactly what this team's looking for. You get someone who has 350 pounds of just pure meat on his bones, who is very powerful in a straight line. I think he needs to work on his lateral mobility, but that's a big ask from a very big dude. And he moves really well for that size. He uses his arm length very well. And he's been even seen trucking over one of my favorite interior offensive linemen in Bo Limmer. He was able to truck him onto his tush. Like, that power is not taught. That is innate power. And that's something that this team is kind of desperate for. You need help, and Tavondre Sweat will deliver. Pick 24 for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, looking at the options available, a defensive interior, I think with Jerzon Newton, could be up your alley. As Mozzie Smith continues to develop, he was a developmental prospect. I don't know why people thought he was going to be an absolute superstar day one. I think that he got thrown into the Wolves a little bit too early. I think he went too deep too early, and he got a little bit scared, and he didn't develop the way he should have year one. But have some hope. I mean, again, like, this guy has another 4 years or minimum 3 years left on his contract. Give him some time. He's a big dude who was an athletic freak. That's why he was relegated as such a big prospect. Have some patience. But you got guys like Jerzon Newton here who could complement that so damn well. And he actually plays the run very well. This is the range where people are seeing Jerzon Newton fall. I think Cooper DeJean is a very big dark horse candidate. Same thing with Nate Wiggins here, who's a great player. But I think Jerzon Newton brings a little bit more excitement to the table in terms of what it's going to do day one than a Nate Wiggins. And you know Jerry. Jerry's going to do what he wants. And going after a defensive interior like Jerzon, who's a completely different build than Mozzie Smith, doesn't admit defeat. So that's what I like about this move. And Jerzon can play some edge reps. He's just very versatile. He's going to play every rep. And this dude is going crazy on Twitter trying to promote himself. So this guy, he is in full sell mode. I think this team is one to buy someone who's selling. So Jerzon Newton goes to the Cowboys. Pick number 25 for the Green Bay Packers. Cooper DeJean's here. Very excited to potentially put him on the team. I want to change things up, though. I always go Cooper DeJean when he's there. I think it's a very smart move. Like, don't get me wrong. The offensive tackles that are available, just wanted to double check that nobody crazy was slipping. But with the corners, I mean, I think this team definitely is going to be in the market for maybe a boundary corner here and there. I think they could use some safety help. I don't think the safeties separated themselves really at all. I think the safety class is extremely weak. And actually, I just talked myself back into taking Cooper DeJean because I reviewed the safety class, and there's quite a few guys who I thought were significantly worse than what's advertised. So let's go Cooper DeJean. Let's do it. I'm going to back up. It's pick 25. It's not like we're talking the top 15 where I'm taking the same player every time. Nate Wiggins would have been a great choice. I've taken boundary corner to this team plenty of times. Pick 26 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Interior offensive line wise, want to see if there's anybody worth it. Christian Haynes is going to slide down my board a little bit. I think his anchor was a bit compromised, even though he was voted offensive lineman of the whole entire event there at the Senior Bowl, like Senior Bowl lead offensive lineman. Still think he needs a little bit more time to develop, especially that anchor. It just does really bother me. I don't think that the Buccaneers are going to be the team that gets me going for the best fit for Christian Haynes. So looking at the best options available, I don't know if Baker's actually fully signed back because Canales is gone, but this is where I could see a quarterback like Bo Nix going, Michael Penix going, like that. This is a good spot for one of those guys. JJ McCarthy, even though I am pretty confident that JJ's potentially played himself out of the first round by just not playing for one, but not because he had a choice. He didn't choose to not play, but looking at the way Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson just ascended to being elite targets at these bowl games. Yes, the scheme has definitely a big part to play in it. That's why we're not saying that he's a bum. But as a first-round quarterback, you need to elevate talent, even though through the scheme, like you have to still elevate the talent, and he didn't. I think Jordan Morgan might be the right move for this spot. Going after someone who can play guard, potentially play center, and then also have that flexibility for tackle, I think it is very valuable for a roster that is looking for an instant upgrade, and having that tackle skill and moving to guard is going to be kind of key. So maybe Jordan Morgan played himself out of the first, but for now, we're going to hold him here. Pick 27 for the Arizona Cardinals. I have Nate Wiggins on the board. I'm not going to think about it twice. He fits a Gannon system so damn well. So the Cardinals are drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. as well as Nate Wiggins. Pick 28 for the Buffalo Bills. I think that this team should be really honing in on wide receiver, and Brian Thomas Jr. is here. He's an excellent complement to what they already have in Stephon Diggs, and it also takes him away from the Chiefs. Pick number 29 for the Detroit Lions. Looking at Ennis Rakestraw Jr. here, and I love it. I also love going edge rusher for him, but I could also potentially wait for Jonah Ellis, who's son of Luther Ellis, who y'all took in the first round multiple years ago, like decades ago, to be fair. So I think that's a smart move. I like going edge rusher for the team, but Ennis Rakestraw is my number 2 corner. He just had a core surgery that put him out of the Senior Bowl, so I don't think he's going to go that high. And y'all know I like giving good players to the Lions. Not on purpose, but it just usually ends up being that way. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., you need a boundary corner number 1. This guy's phenomenal. Hopefully he comes back from that surgery and ends up having a killer combine. At pick number 30 for the Baltimore Ravens, wide receiver feels like the right move for this team as well. Ladd McConkey could be that guy who takes over for where Odell Beckham Jr. is. That might be the move. Xavier Legette used to be a guy who would consider here, but I don't think he had a good enough week. A.D. Mitchell, though, could be. A.D. Mitchell's a smooth athlete. I think he's very underrated at the moment. Even though he is here at 40s, I think that's a guy who I might put above Troy Franklin when all is said and done. He's a very talented player, and you are essentially going to be adding someone who's 6'4", very fluid, and good after the catch. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a beast. I think maybe you could look at a couple of the other DBs on the board, but I'm going to go A.D. Mitchell. I think he's going to sneak above Troy Franklin in this case because he has an extra 10 pounds on him over Troy. Pick number 31 for the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, I also think this is a defensive move, and don't worry about the order. I did not purposely choose the Chiefs to lose. I honestly hope the Chiefs win because my boy Rashee Rice is on the team. But, we ball. But for the Kansas City Chiefs, you got Troy Franklin here. It was going to be pretty much one of these 3 that falls to him. Ladd McConkey is a sneaky option, but getting that 6'3" frame at 190, you do get an additional 4 or 5 inches of height. It's a different role that Troy Franklin's going to play. At pick number 32 for the San Francisco 49ers, yes, we are seeing the quarterbacks fall out of the first. It is what it is. I am looking potentially at corner here. You do still have some very solid ones on the board. My boy Dwight McLaughlin, let's go. Love Dwight. Not going to be taking him here in the first. He'll definitely be like maybe someone who I like to throw in the second round. Kalen King, yes, I have my tail between my legs. We're not going to talk about that. But for the Niners, though, I do think they could be in the market for a Kingsley Suamataia, who he had quite a few good reps, but he's also showing he needs a little bit more development. Who better to develop him than Trent Williams? He has great mobility, and I think that's honestly a huge plus. Karan Amajaje is a super big dark horse, but I actually think the Niners are either going to trade up really far or trade down significantly, because I don't think that there was enough play to justify this without this being, a no trades mock. So we'll go Kingsley because, again, he needs that development. Maybe they like it because they get both right and left tackle versatility and they get that 5th-year contract to really develop him. He's a great player. We'll see what happens. Pick 33 for the Carolina Panthers, though. I mean, looking at the options available, wide receiver wise, Keon Coleman. I actually talked to the Carolina Panthers social media team. Good people, by the way. So shout out to Cassidy. Cassidy, Shane, and Ben. Or no, Dan. Shout out to y'all 3. Y'all are great people. Probably not watching the show, but that's okay. We love you anyways. I think Keon Coleman's going to be the choice here, but Tez Walker is from the North Carolina area, apparently. And I think Xavier Legette is originally from there, too. I know South Carolina is different than North Carolina, but I think those are the 2 players they're doing spotlights on. Doesn't mean they're going to draft him, but it just means, hey, these are the local kids at the Senior Bowl. We're going to go Keon Coleman, though. He's just the right type of guy for this offense that's looking for a wide receiver 1 and needs somebody to just give Bryce a reliable option. At pick 34, maybe the Patriots could have waited and gotten Bo Nix or Michael Penix, but it's okay. It's okay. I am looking potentially at an offensive tackle here. I think that wide receiver, you still have really solid value. Some good players are here. Tez Walker is still 6'2", 200 pounds. He just had some drop issues. And I think Ladd McConkey, it feels like a Patriots wide receiver. Tell me it doesn't. Tell me it doesn't. You're going to be lying. I want to send him to the Eagles, but that's just not going to happen. Ladd McConkey is, by definition, a Patriot. His name's Ladd. You just know it's going to be a New England Patriot. Got to meet Ladd as well. Humble dude. Again, one of the best route runners. He really played himself arguably as a first-round pick. So we're going to draft him. I think that getting a big body wide receiver should be a priority of the Patriots, but the value is just not there at this pick. At pick 35 for the Arizona Cardinals, we need to draft an interior defensive line. And Chris Jenkins is a phenomenal player. I wish he ended up playing at the Senior Bowl, but, he didn't. We saw quite a few guys there at the Senior Bowl. Some of them did some pretty good jobs. Shout out to Christian Boyd. Might be able to feature him tomorrow or the next day in our 3-round mock draft. But we're going to go Chris Jenkins here. He's able to play multiple positions. He's over 300 pounds. He's very athletic. He's very smart. Just overall a really good dude who I have a ton of respect for. And it just adds to the defensive mindset that we need to have when drafting for the Cardinals. At pick 36 for the Washington Commanders, we're going Braylon Trice. He is a top 10 player for me in this draft. He just fell because I don't think he's going to be going as highly as the other edge rushers. But 274, who actually knows how to put up pressures, has great hand technique, good athlete overall. He's a really good and very underrated player. Shout out to Braylon. But yes, we got Jaden Daniels as well as Braylon Trice. Pick 37 for the Chargers. We went after Brock Bowers in round number 1. Shout out to Darius Robinson as well. I chose to start loving him at the perfect time. But wide receiver wise, I think he just might wait for Roman. He might. I think that's a smart move. Wait for Roman. So other positions they could target. You could go after another edge rusher for the future. Looking at the corners available, man, this class falls off. I didn't even think about it. This class really does fall off. Damn, that is a painful sight to see. I do think this team could be in the mood for another offensive lineman. And, I don't like this pick at all. I could look at running back, though. This is another team. Of course, I could see Harbaugh going in the 4th round for Blake Corum and 3rd round for, his other receiver, Roman Wilson. This pick feels a little bit more ambiguous. And I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here. And I think I did this before the draft. I'm going to go Junior Colson. I talked about him needing linebackers and tight ends. Junior Colson's a true Mike linebacker. This team's looking for a true Mike. You still got Diane Henley developing, which is awesome. But, this team is looking for a true Mike for the future. And this guy has been a rock solid there for Jim. And, we need to see linebackers go off earlier than expected anyways, because those positions randomly do. And Junior Colson will be the first guy off the board. He's the only one who really brings that 6'3", 250 build. And similar to last year with Jack Campbell, could see with a good combine that this dude ends up rising up boards really, really fast. Pick 38 for the Tennessee Titans, though. Got Joe Alt in round number 1. Got all these beautiful quarterbacks here in round number 2, but we're not taking a single one of them. Could even just double down on offensive line. I'm not going to do that, though. Like, I'm looking at the wide receivers here. This is a proper value maybe for a Jalen Polk or Xavier Legette, Tez Walker. Like, I do think that would be a smart move for this team. The defensive back value is just not here. And like when looking at other positions, I just don't think that there's a comparable value to potentially getting Xavier Legette here, who is a solid route runner. He just didn't wow by any stretch. Tez had his drop issues. I love Jermaine Burton. I do, but I just don't think he brings the size in terms of height necessary to get, well, he's only an inch shorter than Xavier Legette, to be fair, and 2 inches shorter than Tez. But I think Tez is going to get some love because he was able to school some of the corners there. He just needs to work on his drop issues, and, who better to teach him than DeAndre Hopkins? Tez Walker goes to the Titans. Pick number 39 for the New York Giants. It got our beautiful wide receiver Malik Nabers in round number 1. Here in round number 2, I'm actually going to look at one of the quarterbacks. I think this is proper value to bring on one of these dudes, and Bo Nix fits the offense much better than Michael Penix, in my opinion. You got plenty of mobility. J.J. McCarthy's there as well, but Bo Nix has had, at least we've seen, an ascension from Auburn. He actually had a career revival, and, he's had his issues for sure, but I think Dable very well might be open to bringing on a new signal caller. Of course, he was also looking at offensive and defensive line, so we'll discuss that momentarily. And pick 40 for the Washington Commanders. I think I actually might double down on edge rusher. I know offensive tackle with Karan Amajaje, Patrick Paul. Those are some pretty solid moves here. There's a really good edge rusher who slipped, and that's Chop Robinson. And talk about a perfect pairing. I love Chop. Could have probably taken him earlier, but it's just very difficult to find a place in a team that would really appreciate and develop Chop. And I think Dan Quinn's the type of guy who loves a Penn State edge rusher and will develop him into a superstar. He's still a top 32 player for me. Like, where's he at? He's 26 on my board. I love him. But, he needs development. And he didn't fully develop this year. So he very well might be here. At pick number 41 for the Green Bay Packers. We've gone after Cooper DeJean after I said I was not going to go Cooper DeJean. So sue me. Please don't. I'm not in the mood to be sued again. But at pick number 41, this could be the first running back pick. I think we actually might see another linebacker come off the board here. Having a lot of injuries in that linebacking core, you got Devondre Campbell, who's just been very inconsistently healthy. And you got one linebacker here who also plays like an edge rusher role in Edgerrin Cooper, who's very, very exciting. I like that move for this team, but when you look into the corner core, I'm not a fan of TJ Tampa. I don't think he's honestly that good. I hate to say it. I really wanted to love him, and I just kind of didn't. Looking at defensive interior, though, you got some good players here, too. I think adding in another run defender would be good, but there's just not that many guys who would, qualify for that. I'm going to throw a curveball here because I haven't done this in a while. I actually might go for a running back. It's going to be running back or offensive tackle. Karan Amajaje actually does feel like the right move. I think David Bakhtiari is going to be playing a year, like just one more year. And this is a team that also drafts essentially a year in advance of when the players are actually going to be at the caliber of the player that they select. I'm going to just throw a curveball here. I'll actually go Karan over a running back because I do think the running backs are actually quite solid down the board and not enough of them are talented enough at the top. So Karan is a very talented left tackle from Yale, needs development, and David Bakhtiari is an amazing mentor. I wouldn't pay Rasheed Walker starting caliber money. He's a good player, but I just think that getting your value out of Karan would be a little bit more fiscally responsible. Pick 42 for the Minnesota Vikings. We passed on a quarterback in round 1, and we have our pick of the litter here. We got Penix and McCarthy. I said for us to re-sign Kirk. If that's going to be the move, and it will be in this episode, the right move is to go J.J. McCarthy because he needs a year, if not 2, of development. Sign Kirk to a 2-year deal, let J.J. sit and develop, and then end up having his Jordan Love arc. I think that's the smart move. Michael is going to be for a team that needs a quarterback right now. It's going to be the next team, and that's going to be the right move. So we're going to go J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan to sit behind Kirk for 1 to 2 years and develop because he is younger and has some growing to do, but he has a higher ceiling because of the age, because of the injuries than Michael Penix. But at pick 43, we got the Falcons, who drafted Dallas Turner in round number 1. Double checking my facts, and it's true. This is a pretty easy decision for me. It's Michael Penix Jr. This team needs someone to utilize the only 2 weapons they have left on roster, but Kyle Pitts and Drake London need someone to throw him the ball. I think Michael Penix is worth taking a shot on here. At pick number 44 for the Chicago Bears, we traded Justin Fields. This is the Justin Fields pick. So we ended up drafting Jared Verse. So I actually ended up doing the exact opposite of what I should have done, by the way. RIP to that. So sorry, guys. Love y'all. I ended up taking Jared Verse to complement Montez Sweat because I didn't think the edge rushers would be here. Chris Braswell, Jonah Ellis, Darius Robinson would be all great compliments. So I will apologize for that ahead of time. But you still get Xavier Legette and Jalen Polk and Jermaine Burton. I'll go Xavier Legette, who's still a very talented player. I think he just played himself out of the first round. Great compliment there to DJ Moore. 6'1", 220 pounds. That's a really good build. Great after the catch as well. Moves very fluidly. I think he just needs to be a little more consistent with the nuances of the game, and who better to learn from than, DJ Moore. At pick number 45, though, for the New Orleans Saints. So we went after Amarius Mims in round number 1. And here in round number 2, I think defensive interior might be a move that they certainly want to prioritize. I think maybe a wide receiver 2. Could even look at another quarterback, but we took the ones that should be taken off the board. Could go Michael Pratt and just stay in New Orleans. That'd be kind of cool. That'd be a cool story, by the way. But, looking at the other guys who are available, I do like the idea of going after defensive line here. Ruka Roro, pairing him back up with his buddy there in, why am I slipping on the name? Why am I tripping? Brian Breezy, pairing him back up with his former college teammate would be actually a very, very smart move. I'd trade out of this spot personally because you don't have a 3rd-round pick. But without a 3rd-round pick, you do need that defensive interior prowess. So we're going to be going after Rook Arorojo here out of Clemson. Pick 46 for the Colts got Rome Odunze in round number 1. I think an edge rusher here would not be a bad idea. You had 4 edge rushers with more than 7 sacks, but nobody is a true edge 1. Darius Robinson could be someone who completely changes how your defense is ran. I mean, 286, who can play 3 tech, who can play 5 tech, who can he could be a 7 tech, or why am I tripping? Wide 9, 7 tech. Like, you could just put him anywhere. I love that. Big fan of that idea. And I want to see him go sometime soon. Defensive interior, you could try to get your nose tackle in the future. I think it's a bit early and premature for that. You could target a guy like Cam Kitchens, Kalen Bullock at this point, because I think it's proper value for either of them. Interior offensive line, you still actually have some really good players like Graham Barton, who I think would be a massive asset to this team at that guard role. That might be where I go. I did actually end up talking to Shane Steichen, so that was pretty cool. Another big plus of going to the Senior Bowl. He was actually watching some of the weapons as well as the quarterbacks there. I doubt it was the quarterbacks. He was looking at the weapons. And that was not the guy who we selected for this team, but that's okay. I do think that they end up targeting either a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman here. I just don't think the value is anywhere else. And so I'm actually going to go Graham Barton out of Duke because of that versatility of playing center. He was actually recruited to Duke as a center, being able to play guard or tackle. He's going to obviously play guard in the short run, but it is the smart thing to do. Pick 47 for the New York Giants would have been my dream to take Graham Barton, but I know that me staying next to Brian Dable, we both saw the same thing. We saw Christian Haynes being a beast. Now, I think he needs to work in his pass pro, but this dude's upside as a pure run blocker and, on the move with Bo Nix, kind of sick. Not going to lie, kind of sick. Let's go after Christian Haynes here out of Connecticut. At pick 48 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, took a corner in round 1 in Quinyon Mitchell. Here at pick 48, I think this team Balky loves his freak athletes. And Darius Robinson, I know you're probably going to be keeping Josh Allen, but if you don't, not bad. 286. Dude plays like an absolute monster as a pass rusher. I think he's more refined as a pass rusher than Travon Walker was coming out. I'm going to take Darius Robinson to this team. I think it just fits the drafting philosophy. Edge rusher depth is also extremely key to keep everybody healthy and fresh. And Darius Robinson just fits it to a T. Big fan of that. Pick 49 for the Cincinnati Bengals. Could end up seeing Zach Frazier being a dark horse pick to this team, but I'm actually going to just go with my standard pick here at Jatavian Sanders. Went after a tackle in round number 1. Going to continue adjusting for the new era with Joe Burrow at the helm. It's not really a new era, but it's a new era with Joe getting paid. So you kind of have to get good value there at receivers. Pick number 50 for the Philadelphia Eagles, drafted. Who do we get in round 1? Kool-Aid McKinstry. So with Kool-Aid McKinstry taken off the board, I'm actually looking at, I would love Kamari, but I'm not going to do that. It makes no sense, right? To go after 2 DBs. Wide receiver-wise, Jermaine Burton does feel like a really good wide receiver 3 for this team. I just don't think they're going to take one at this spot. I think there's a perfect pick, especially for a Vic Fangio defense that loves their linebackers to be able to go on the line of scrimmage. Doesn't care about them being 230 or even sub 230. You got Edgerrin Cooper here. That's the dream pick for Philly. I don't think Edgerrin Cooper as a pure linebacker is phenomenal. I think when you get to use him on the line of scrimmage, this dude becomes a first round type of player. Like he really, if you utilize him in all phases of the game, in all parts of the game, in all positions, you're going to get yourself a superstar. So this is the team. This is the coach who's been using sub 230-pound linebackers very efficiently. I think this is the best spot for Edgerrin Cooper. I'm praying for his sake he ends up going to Philly. Pick number 51 for the Los Angeles Rams. Looking at Kamari Lassiter here, really loving the idea. Got Byron Murphy there in round number 1. Kamari Lassiter is super versatile. He's super smart. The Rams have been willing to take undersized corners as well. So I think Kamari actually might find his home here in LA. You could also use him as safety because he is just very much a very field-aware corner. Pick 52 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cornerback would have been great. I kind of just took all of them. So RIP to that. Linebacker-wise, I don't think there's anybody who is really a standout. I don't like Jeremiah Trotter that much. Peyton Wilson has too many injury histories. You got Defwan Olufosho, who I'm extremely high on. I do like him a lot. Actually had a pretty damn solid Senior Bowl in my opinion. But I think the right move is just to go best player available, and that's Zach Frazier for this team. Could go Cedric Van Pran and, have that chemistry, but SVP didn't really feel like I don't love him as much as Zach Frazier, who rose up my boards. People got mad at me for saying I don't know if he actually is able to play at an NFL level last year. He ended up having a really, really solid year, and people don't understand what progression means, but that's okay. It's okay. I love y'all anyways. But we need a center desperately, and he is, besides Bo Limmer, the best center on the board, and I just don't think Bo is going to go higher than Zach. Pick number 53 for the Dolphins, who took Jackson Powers-Johnson in round number 1. No tight end available here, but I am actually quite intrigued with the idea of Jermaine Burton to this squad. Deep threat, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's been elite since high school. He actually went to my rival high school. Played with Johnny Wilson in high school, by the way, over at Calabasas. Totally forgot about him there. So I think he's actually going to be a contingency plan for Tyreek Hill. And that's just a very smart move. You're playing a very smart game, getting a very talented player. Also going back to Bama. He doesn't get a good enough rap. Great player, though. On pick number 54 for Philly, I think this is the time where they take a wide receiver 3. And Jalen Polk's a sneaky dude. He's a sneaky wide receiver. Really good player. Could look at offensive tackle here, though. You could try to develop somebody. You could say, Patrick Paul, we're going to develop you. I don't think that's the case. You look at the edge rushers. You got some good ones on the board, but none of them are actually the size profile I would be looking for Philly to essentially pass or get their, progression or their, what am I trying to say? Their replacement for Josh Sweat, their contingency plan. There we go. For Josh Sweat. I think Howie's going to go bounce offensive and defensive. We're going to go a nice balance between the two. Jalen Polk's a great wide receiver 3 to have. He was a wide receiver 3 this year and just absolutely ate there for Washington. Great mobility as well. And he could actually produce like a wide receiver 2, if not wide receiver 1. At that 6'2", 204-pound frame as well. It just complements perfectly. Pick number 55 for Cleveland. Defensive interior. I love going after high-level defensive interiors. And you got Leonard Taylor here for the Browns. He provides what the Oklahoma defensive interior they drafted, like Perry and Winfrey, what he didn't. He has just tons of untapped potential. He was misused there at Miami. A little bit out of shape, but I think he's somebody who could really have a great career ascension there in Cleveland. He probably will even go potentially in the first round if people see what he could be in a different role. Pick 56 for the Dallas Cowboys. We ended up going after defensive interior earlier with Jerzon Johnny Newton. Now, at this selection, I think getting a developmental tackle like Patrick Paul would not be a bad idea at all. He had some solid reps there at the Senior Bowl. I think he got proper amount of flack for it. Bo Limmer, I think, is a better player in terms of what the Cowboys should be looking for in terms of a center. But, cornerback-wise, man, this isn't a good pick for the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm going to be completely blunt. There's just not really a great option. Dominic Puny could be, a pretty solid option for them to play him as a hybrid tackle guard, but, at that point, you might as well go Cooper Beebe and kick Tyler Smith the tackle, right? So I'm looking at Patrick Paul here, and I think that might be the right move to develop him for 1 year, have him sit and develop, because I still think he's working on his game. He's a good player. I have nothing against Patrick Paul. He's a solid player. I have him in my 80s, but this is the proper range to test him out and see how he does. So we're going to go Patrick Paul, tackle out of Houston. Pick number 57 for the Green Bay Packers. We've gone Karan Ahmedjadjeh as well as Cooper DeJean. Some really good choices for this team and, some big stretches in my opinion for at least we introduce some new guys to the fold. I think this is a position where I might see Dwight McGlothern taken. He might be one of those guys who sneaks up and surprises us with a good pick. But you got Cam Kinchens here, and I think Cooper DeJean will end up taking the Keyshawn Nixon role. I think Cam Kinchens is just too good to pass on. Tyler Nubin slipped on my board pretty significantly. Cam Kinchens still could be that dude. Pick 58 for the Buccaneers, though. We went after offensive interior with Jordan Morgan in round number 1. Here in round number 2, we're going to go edge rusher with Chris Braswell out of Alabama. Just a high floor Bama edge rusher, redshirt senior, has a ton of experience, can be a day one impact. Kind of a little bit of a departure from the projects that they've been taking, but the old dudes are getting older, and sometimes it's nice to get a known commodity. Pick number 59 for the Houston Texans. Went defensive interior round number 1. Wide receivers, I just don't think the value is there. Neither is it for tight end. Linebacker-wise, you're still stretching. You're still stretching the potential there. So I do like the idea of Johnny Wilson on this team. I know that y'all hate it, but, we ball. I think that might be the move I go with because he actually might end up being a really solid tight end for y'all. He is essentially a burrito away from being a tight end. Even though I love him to death, he's still a top 32 player for me, but he did slip a little bit. Great player overall. Wish he did a little bit more during the Senior Bowl, but you don't find guys who are 6'7", 240 who can move the way he can. After watching also his wingspan is 99th percentile. After seeing what happened with a similar build of a prospect, even though he was shorter at 6'3", in Sam Laporta, I think Johnny Wilson could have a very similar career arc, except he's just not as good of a blocker. So I'm going to test out that theory. Johnny Wilson goes to Houston. Pick 60 for Buffalo. I think that, after going Brian Thomas in round 1, the priority should be going on defense. Looking at some guys who could be potentially some good choices here, I think Kalen Bullock's your best bet. This dude might make some big mistakes, but he really does have the highest ceiling out of these safeties available. So I like him more than Cam Kinchens, but Kalen Bullock still has just a little bit more of an edge, but Cam Kinchens is still a great player. This is still within range for Cam Kinchens, so I didn't reach on him. Kalen Bullock just has a ton more potential, in my opinion, just a little bit smaller of a build. Pick 61 for the Lions. Talked about it earlier. I'm going to go Jonah Ellis here. Y'all drafted Luther Ellis in the first round, his father, a couple decades ago, and now you're going to be bringing on his son, Jonah Ellis, to the fold. Ended up getting Ennis Rakestraw Jr. in round number 1, so you're getting an elite corner 1 and a very nice edge 2. Pick 62 for the Baltimore Ravens. Debating on going a running back here for him because I have seen quite a few people take running backs like Trey Benson, who I do adore. This might be the proper time to take one. And, this team doesn't really have a solidified RB1, in my opinion. That's like a bona fide RB1. Great running back rotation, but this is their chance to get a true RB1. So we're going to give Lamar a little bit more of a break and grab Trey Benson, who's a guy who could be in all phases of the game. Pick 63 for the Chiefs ended up drafting Troy Franklin in round number 1. Here in round number 2, I love to look at defensive interior. Braden Fiskey had some great explosiveness But I think McKinley Jackson was a very much an unsung hero. He had some very good reps and showed some great explosiveness there at that 320-pound frame. That's something that you can develop and move around your line. He has the explosiveness for it. Mekhi Wingo is probably going to be the more popular choice for the team, but I'm going to still go McKinley Jackson because I have McKinley higher than Mekhi. Pick number 64, and ending off the draft, we got the Niners who drafted Kingsley Sua-Mataea in round number 1. Here in round 2, I could just take TJ Tampa because it's a more logical selection. Could go Kalen King just to suffice my undying love for him, which has faded very quickly. But I'm actually going to go Dwight McGlothern here out of Arkansas. One of my guys in the draft. I got to see how he did over at the Shrine Bowl. But, somebody who's an absolute ball hawk. He's very physical, and he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. Big fan of that. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching and showing the love that y'all always do. See you on the far side.